Hey, music fans, welcome back. It is time to return to Genesis once again. Now, you may be wondering, what's going on? We haven't seen this channel post in a while. And well, I've been busy. I've been busy with other projects. I've been making videos about the Rolling Stones and about the Beatles, about CCR, and lots of other things, but not on this channel. On my friends' channels, one of them is this guy right here, Jacob Martin. And so I also tried making a second YouTube channel, but it didn't work. So that's why you'll see all the Genesis videos are now over on this channel instead of on the other one, which I may or may not have deleted the other channel. So Genesis, this is the new home of the Genesis videos. Anybody, if you were subscribed to Scrap Dog Scott's Records, that channel doesn't exist anymore, so watch them over here. Today, though, we are going to talk about the second album with Mr. Phil Collins on lead vocals, and that is Wind and Wuthering, released the same year, 1976. And Mr. Jacob Martin is here to help review, as he is in all of these Genesis reviews. So, Jacob, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good, Scott. Thank you for having me once again. First off, I gotta say, rest in peace, Scrap Dog Scott's Records. I'm gonna miss that theme song. That theme song was kind of an earworm. I'm not gonna lie. That
it was stupid. It was stupid. Okay, that green screen stuff that I was doing with the people. See, people aren't gonna know what I'm talking about because it's deleted. But we'll just say that the song I made for my second channel was extremely stupid. So you'll never know. You'll never get to see me doing the stupid dance with the chickens in the Sledgehammer music video because that channel got deleted.
Hey, it was an earworm. I kind of liked it.
Well, all the important videos were put over to this channel here. And if I ever pick up my Yes videos again, then I'll bring the Yes videos over here as well. But we got Nick from Townsend 505 says, "What's up?"
What's up, Nick?
What's up, Nick? We are trucking along through Genesis here. Wind and Wuthering is the album review for today. It's the one right after Trick of the Tail, second one with Phil Collins. And I'm excited to get to move on with these Genesis albums because these next few Phil Collins albums are really good, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's very exciting. Really love the Trick of the Tail. And yeah, thank you for getting me on this series because I'm now having a deeper appreciation for Genesis than I ever had before.
All right, so this album, Wind and Wuthering. Jacob, what's your brief kind of overview thoughts about this album?
Wind and Wuthering. I really like this album. I don't think it's as good as The Trick of the Tail. That's still my favorite Genesis album so far. I think there's a couple of the Peter Gabriel era albums I prefer over this. I don't think this matches like Nursery Crime or Foxtrot or even the very crazy can't talk tonight. The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. But still a good album. There's still great talent on display. It's got their first minor hit song on it. And it was cool hearing their first technically radio hit. That kind of paved the way for what was to come, I guess, for Genesis. I think there's that's like one too many instrumental tracks. I think that's what holds it back from being a great album. But overall, I think it's a solid Genesis album.
I think that this is a pretty solid follow-up to Trick of the Tail. I mean, Trick of the Tail being Trick of the Tail. Obviously, whatever comes next is going to be a little bit of a disappointment because there's not really anything that's much better than you can do than that. However, I still think that this is a really great album, some really good songs on it. I kind of like the overall vibe and feel of this album. It's got kind of a slightly mellow vibe to it. I think Ryer from Breyer's Music Showcase put it perfectly. This is the perfect kickoff to winter album. It has a very cold but yet inviting feel to it, if that makes sense. Much like the cover on the front, the trees losing their leaves. So, yeah, I am excited to get to talk about this record. The first song we have on here is 11th Earl of Mar.
All right. Genesis usually has really strong album openers. This one is really good as well. Now, I will say this is one of the weaker tracks on the album, in my opinion, but that does not stop the fact that this is still a really cool song. It's one of the lengthier tracks. It's got some really good drumming in it from Phil Collins. Some really good keyboards and synthesizers. I will say, for this whole album, Tony Banks is on fire on this album. He does some great stuff musically, whether on the keyboards. I think he does a mellotron on one of the songs, and he plays the organ at one part. Man, he is awesome in this album, and this is a pretty good way to open the album. I think it sets the mood of the album very well. I think I read it was based on some kind of history. I don't really know this guy very well, but looking just at the lyrics, I think he's some type of leader, and he has a son, and the son's annoyed with him because Phil Collins every other minute keeps saying, "Daddy, you promised." Which, yeah, him saying "Daddy, you promised," I think gets a little annoying after a while. That's probably why it's lower on my song ranking, but still a pretty cool song regardless. Probably not my favorite song, but still pretty good.
You see, when I first heard this, I thought he was saying Danny, like the guy's name was Danny.
Oh.
But once I have the lyric sheet inside the album, and when I figured that out, I'm like, oh, it's just an annoying little kid who keeps screaming at his dad. Yeah, that is annoying. So I really can't understand what the lyrics are in this, other than it has something to do with the relationship between a father and a son, and I think the father is the Pope or something like that. That's all I can get out of the lyrics of this song. But musically, I'm going to say that the opening of this song is super cool. That super cool way to open the album. I like that. But then, like, you get into the actual song, and it's good. It's just not great. I mean, the musicianship is top notch. Tony Banks, like you were saying, on this album, he's on fire, and he doesn't really let up. He just keeps on going with this synthesizer throughout the rest of this album and throughout, honestly, the next several albums too. But this particular album kind of has walls of synth that just kind of wash over you. And that's very clear on this song. And I like Phil Collins' drumming as well. So it's a good song. It's just I feel like there's better songs on this album. Much like the next song, One for the Vine.
One for the Vine. This is another really good follow-up. The longest song on the album. It's 10 minutes long. And I think this is another really cool song. I like the experimentation of different styles on this song. It's more of a ballad for most of the song, but then, like, I'd say in the middle of the album, I keep saying album when I mean to say song. But in the middle of the song, you got Phil Collins picking it up on the drums, and it really kicks into high gear. I think there's a funkier part of the song as well that was really cool. And it keeps trying to subvert itself, I noticed. And I think because of what I could gather with the story, the writing behind this song, it kind of makes sense. Because I think it's about a guy who has kind of a god complex and is trying to form a cult, and the people turn on him over time. It's kind of like what the Who did with the Tommy album,
I can kind of see
back
that.
half of that story, where he's like goes all crazy and tries to start a cult, and the people reject him. Uh, Maybe it's kind of on that level.
Kind of. I can kind of see something different, but I'll talk about my interpretation when I do the review.
This one, it didn't make my top 5, but I love the musicality of this song, and it's still really cool.
Okay, this song is epic. This song is epic. I kind of see it as like a warrior who's like trying to get a following to go into battle, but then like he ends up losing in the end. And, like kind of like how people said the Titanic was unsinkable and then it sunk. This guy is saying he's unbeatable, and then in the end he dies and he gets beat. That's kind of my interpretation of this song. Is that this warrior is claiming to be invincible and it's like, follow me and I'll lead you to victory, and then he loses at the end. But this song just goes through so many different musical changes. It starts out kind of like a ballad, and then from there, it goes into this really awesome Bee Gees type falsetto thing when it gets to like the follow me. When it gets to that section, I can tell that Phil Collins was inspired by the Bee Gees when he does that section, because it sounds a lot like Very Good whenever he sings that part. And then it kind of slows down, and then it has this really cool middle section where it goes like and there's like weird like duck quacking sound effects and stuff in the background, and like alarm clocks going off. And I'm like, this is cool, and it builds up, and then you get that end section where it's the warrior losing. This is going to be in my top 5. It's a really cool song, and I like all the different changes in it. So,
yeah. I mean, it's an epic song. I wanted to put it in my top 5. I mean, when I first heard the album, it was in my top 5, but listening to it again, there's just some of the other songs I like more.
Oh yeah, no, all these songs are pretty good. There's not really any bad songs on this album. The next song is definitely not a bad song. Your Own Special Way.
Oh yeah, so this was Genesis' first radio hit, at least in the U.S. I think they had maybe 1 or 2 radio hits already in the We're on Your Own Special Way, Nick. But yeah, this was their first radio hit, at least in the U.S. I don't think it was a huge hit. One, because I'd never heard the song before until listening to this album. I think their first major hit wasn't until the next album when we get the Follow You, Follow Me. But regardless, this is an awesome song. A great acoustic ballad. I love the guitar work on this song. The chorus is so good. Oh, you have your own special way. Something touching your hand. Oh man,
best chorus since Ripples.
Oh yeah, I don't think it's that good, but it's
not that good, but it's like,
yeah, because Your Own Special Ways right here, Ripples is like right up here. So, then there's this really cool. I'd like to say it's either an organ or a keyboard. There's that cool solo from Tony Banks, which is awesome. It's a cool little transition instrumental break. I just think this is a really awesome ballad. It shows that, Genesis can do what people say that they sold out, and they still can put out an amazing quality song with great production value and still be a decent radio hit. Even with them going into the mainstream, they can still put out great songs, and this is no exception.
So what? Genesis doing love songs? Grab your pitchforks and your torch. We're going after them. No, it's actually really good. I mean, I remember watching an interview where they were talking about like when they first started doing these ballads, and they said the reason that they started doing these ballads was because they hadn't done them before. They said that the reason they hadn't done them before is just because that's just not the kind of music that they felt like at the time. But whenever they got to this point in their career, they were like, you know what, we haven't done a love ballad yet, so like, why don't we try that? And their first attempt is this one right here, Your Own Special Way, which starts out with this really cool guitar kind of thing from Steve Hackett. Apparently he's in a weird tuning. But Steve Hackett's opening guitar is really cool. And Phil Collins' vocals, oh my goodness. He is singing his heart out on this song. It is so good. And the lyrics to this song are amazing. It's about a guy who's at sea, and the only thing that's really helping him get by is knowing that he'll see his girl again, and he just wants to hold her hand again. And it's basically like, you're basically the one who's making the boat go around. Otherwise, I'd get lost out here at sea. Like, it's amazing. The lyrics are amazing. I love the chorus. You have your own special way of holding my hand. Don't ever let go. Like, great chorus, great lyrics. We already talked about Steve Hackett. That dude's guitar playing on this song is amazing. I'm really sad that this is his last album, too, because I'd have loved to hear what he'd have done on at least the next 2 albums. And then Tony Banks's keyboard textures that go over the whole thing. It's a fantastic song. This is in my top 5.
Yeah, it's in my top 5 as well.
Okay, the next one. What Gorilla?
So we were messaging each other before we went live, and you made a reference to another song that explicitly referenced a movie that Phil Collins would later be a part of. And then I saw the title, What Gorilla. First thing that popped in my mind was when Tarzan was trying to learn the English language, and he's like, Gorillas! So it's like, no wonder Phil Collins got the job for Tarzan, because the Disney executives heard this song, and it's like, we have our man. But all jokes aside, I don't really know what the title represents. It's an instrumental song, and you really get to see Phil Collins drumming in focus, which big plus there, along with a really cool synth part from Tony Banks. This is a really cool song. The more I listen to it, I'm like, the more I really grew to love this song, to the fact that, call me crazy for saying this, because, you know, instrumentals usually aren't my favorite songs on the album, but this one was so epic it made my top 5.
Oh, wow.
It's so awesome.
Wow.
I love this track. Looks like Nick agrees with me.
Yes. Yep. What Gorilla made Nick's top 5? Wow. It's not in my top 5, but I still really like.
It looks like Your Own Special Ways in his top 5, and
I bet you One for the Vine is as well. Oh, maybe that's his top 5 right there.
Yeah.
Anyway, Phil Collins was part of another band at the time. It was a side project called Brand X, which was kind of a jazz fusion kind of a thing. And so with this particular song, Phil Collins wanted to bring some of his jazz fusion influence from Brand X over to Genesis. And that's kind of the basis for this song. Really killer drumming on this song. Man, just have a listen to what Phil is doing on the drum kit on this song. And it's just going to blow your brain if you're a drummer. And like there's like chimes at the beginning. And then when Tony Banks comes in with his synthesizer, man, this is just a super cool instrumental. It's kind of reminiscent of the drumming on Los Endos from the last album. Whenever Genesis do instrumentals from this point on, Phil really just kind of lets loose on the drums.
Yeah. This might be a hot take, but I think this song's better than Los Endos.
Oh, wow. I would disagree, but I can see where you're coming from because the drumming is killer on this track. Okay, now we are going to flip the record over and go to side 2 for. Now, Genesis has these silly songs that they put on each of their albums, and this is the silly song on this album. It's All in a Mouse's Night.
Yeah, this song's goofy, all right. But I'm getting used to the goofy side of Genesis. I mean, we previously had Harold the Barrel. We had the Grand Parade of Lifeless Packaging. And then in the last album, we had one of probably the most epic goofy Genesis song out there with Robbery, Assault, and Battery, which ended up being my second favorite song on the album. This one, it's kind of interesting because he's doing a song about a mouse trying to survive one night. I actually read that they were inspired by Tom and Jerry when crafting the song. I can kind of see the comparison. Just they're just not crazy slapstick comedy like in Tom and Jerry, but the musicianship is still really good. Phil Collins embraces the goofiness of the song. There's this weird part in the end where he's singing about a giant mouse, so it's like this turned into horror movie levels. We got a giant mouse. That's horrifying to visualize. Probably like the slipper people over in Lamb Lies Down on Broadway.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is a really cool song, and much like Nick in the comments, this one made my top 5.
Okay. So, a song that's about a mouse trying to survive in the house should not be this good. It just should not, but it is. It's amazing. We start with this lovely little sentiment about this husband and wife who are talking about how it's cold and they want to snuggle so they can keep warm. Oh, but there's this nasty little mouse in the house and they can't get to sleep unless the mouse is killed or thrown out or whatever. And so the husband goes out to try to kill the mouse, and then the mouse is like, I gotta run away. It's so fun to explore this new shag carpet that they put down or whatever. And then he's like, nope, there's the people. I'm gonna have to run to the breadbasket. And then on his way, he meets the cat, and he's like, I can't survive the cat because the cats are smarter than the people and faster than the people. So I'm pretty much dead for sure. And then the cat's like, I've got you now. You're going to go get it. Basically, the cat says, get in my belly. But then out of nowhere comes the monster mouse who's 10 feet tall that scares the cat away. And that's where it gets kind of weird. But it's like, that's the story of this song. And when you hear the story, you're like, that song is probably terrible. But then you hear it, and it's got all this really crazy synthesizer playing. Phil Collins is drumming and singing is really good. Mike Rutherford's bass. This song is in my top 5. This song is going to be in my top 5. The Mouse song.
Yeah. This is Phil Collins' equivalent to Michael Jackson's Ben. But unlike Ben, where Michael Jackson sang it straight, and that song's about a rat, Phil Collins did not play it straight.
No, he's hamming it up.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get to something serious now. Blood on the Rooftops.
Now, this is a really cool song. It's another acoustic-driven track. It's got a really great chorus. I think it might be the darkest song on the album because it's talking about kind of like the media and violence and political unrest. So in a way, there's a little bit of a relevance to this song. I think it more explicitly references British politics, so I don't really know what was going on in England in 1976. I wasn't there, nor am I British, so I don't know that side of the area too well. But I do really like the song on a technical level. It's got like I said, it's got a really good hook. It draws you in, and I'm gonna say it. This is another one that made the top 5.
Okay, Blood on the Rooftops. So with the political commentary and with the amazing flamenco style guitar at the beginning, I feel like this song wouldn't feel out of place on, say, Selling England by the Pound, honestly. It's very reminiscent of that sound. And it kind of just builds from that flamenco guitar riff into something bigger when Tony Banks comes in. Now, this is the song that infamously name checks Tarzan. I laugh at this song because there's a line that says, hypnotized by Batman Tarzan and still surprised. I'm like, Phil, if you only knew what was going to happen 20 years later, you'd be writing a score to a film about Tarzan, or the soundtrack to a film about Tarzan.
Yeah, and have some of your best solo stuff as well.
But yeah, this very haunting song. This might make my top 5, but there's a lot of good stuff on this record, so we'll see. But I still really like it. Really cool song. Okay, now we're going to get into the little 3-song medley at the end. The next 3 songs kind of go into each other and kind of run together. I'm going to put the 2 instrumentals together since I don't really know where one ends and the other begins. And those are Unquiet Slumbers and In That Quiet Earth.
All right. I think I know where it splits because the first part of it, it's slower and it builds primarily on Tony Banks. And then once it picks up, then it turns into the second part, In That Quiet Earth. I will say, musically, there's some cool stuff on this. I think I got more into the second half, In That Quiet Earth, because it picks up a lot more. And it seems like all the members had a play on this one, had a chance to shine. But if you combine these two together, this is an instrumental that, yes, it's technically good, but I kind of zone out on it. I'm kind of ready to get to the Afterglow song, the big finale. So when I said at the beginning there's like one too many instrumentals on here, having a two punch with these two wasn't really for me. I kind of wish they had, maybe if you had like condensed it into one track and maybe done an extra song with vocals on it, it might have raised the score of the album a little bit. But this one, I'm like, it's but it's easily the weakest two punch on the album.
Here's the thing. I actually kind of like these songs. Like, they're very atmospheric. I mean, the first half is kind of slow. It's just kind of there to build. But then when you get to In That Quiet Earth and it starts picking up, I don't know, it kind of sounds like the prototype for, I know you haven't heard it yet, but the very end of the Duke album, Duke's Travels and Duke's End, it sounds like the prototype for that song, which is even better. They do it so much better on Duke's Travels and Duke's End. But I can hear the seeds of that in these songs here, especially in the synthesizer playing and just kind of the overall feel of the song. And I love that they bring back the 11th Earl of Mar riff. The they bring that back and kind of play around with that theme. They do several different things with that theme. But I don't know. I like it, and it leads perfectly into the final song on the album, Afterglow, which Nick says is an awesome song.
Well, I second that, Nick. I also think it's an awesome song. It's a really cool way to close out the album. You have another ballad on this album, much like Your Own Special Way, another love ballad. This one, you really get to hear Phil Collins drum the heck out of this song, and it's really awesome. I like the other ballad better, probably because it was earlier on the album and it stood out to me more. But Afterglow also made my top 5. It's another epic song in its own right. I could see Afterglow being, because I only read Your Own Special Way was the only hit single from this album. If they had released a second song as a hit single, I would have pushed for Afterglow because it's another good ballad.
Afterglow is kind of it wasn't the biggest hit, but it's the most famous song from this album because Genesis liked to play it at their concerts. It was a big concert favorite.
Gotcha.
And sometimes they would do this medley where they would play you remember In the Cage from Lamb Lies Down on Broadway?
Oh yeah.
They would play In the Cage, and then they would do the instrumental sections from the Cinema Show and Slipperman, and then it would go right into Afterglow. And that was kind of their big live medley that they do.
That's a weird mashup of songs.
It is, but it works so well. You can hear it on the Three Sides Live album, is where you can hear that. Which anybody who's watching, Three Sides Live is an awesome Genesis live album. Check that out. But I really like that little medley that they do. But on here, the In That Quiet Earth leads into Afterglow, and oh my goodness, what an amazing chord progression to start out with. I love how it sounds very triumphant at the beginning. You got Steve Hackett and Tony Banks playing that intro. And then Phil's vocals are very powerful on this song. I can tell that Phil has a lot of power behind his vocals here. Lovely lyrics as well. I have them in here. But I was looking along with the lyrics, and I thought the lyrics were very good as well. very well written song. This should have been a bigger hit than it was. So that is going to bring us now to our top 5. But before we do our top 5, our friend Nick has shared his top 5. Your Own Special Way, What Gorilla, 11th Earl of Mar, All in a Mouse's Night, and Afterglow. And he gives this a 10 out of 10.
Okay. Well, Nick, 4 out of your top 5 are in my top 5 as well. So, but as far as my top 5, number 5, All in a Mouse's Night. Number 4, What Gorilla. Number 3, Afterglow. Number 2, Blood on the Rooftops. Number 1, Your Own Special Way.
So I'm going to start from the bottom and work my way down because I still haven't finalized my list. But I know number 1 is Afterglow. Love that song. Number 2 is Your Own Special Way. It's amazing. Number 3 is One for the Vine. Number 4 is All in a Mouse's Night. And number 5, Blood on the Rooftops.
All right.
So what would you give this album out of 10?
Out of 10. So when we did the Trick of the Tail, that was my first 10 out of 10 for Genesis. Is When and Wuthering gonna be? Will that be my second 10 out of 10 for Genesis? No, but I still think it's a solid album. I think if it had one less instrumental track, I think this album would get a higher score. I don't think this album matches the technical excellence of their previous album, but it's still a good album in its own right. Your Own Special Way is an amazing ballad. I do like a lot of the technical stuff on this album. It doesn't hit the highs of the last album, but I still like it all the same. I'll give this one an 8 out of 10.
So if you want to hear more songs that you think would have been better than the instrumentals, Genesis did release an EP at this time. It's only 3 songs long. It's called Spot the Pigeon, with some of the outtakes from this album that are vocal songs. So maybe you'd like one of those better. But as for me, I'm also giving this an 8 out of 10. It's a very good album. I just think there's better Genesis albums out there. And we're about to get to some better Genesis albums. In my opinion, of course. There's probably going to be some people watching the show like, what? When and Wuthering is my favorite Genesis album. Well, if that is, then more power to you because it's an amazing album. It's just, me particularly, there's Genesis that I like better than this, especially the album that came before it. But as it sits right now, When and Wuthering is an 8 out of 10. Okay. All right. Well, that concludes When and Wuthering.
Yeah, so next is Then There Were Three, right?
Yes. Sadly, this is the last album to feature Steve Hackett. I really wish he would have stayed on for at least 2 more albums, but we're still going to get like some amazing music coming up. And Then There Were Three is next. It's got their first big hit, Follow You, Follow Me. Duke is amazing. I love that album. Abacab is so avant-garde and weird, but it's cool. Their self-titled album, Invisible Touch, man, so many good albums coming up. Yeah. So don't go away.
I'll make one final statement with Steve Hackett. I mean, yeah, maybe this wasn't the best Genesis album, but I still think he had a good run being in the band. And again, the guitar work he did on Your Own Special Way, if that's how you want to end Genesis on, not a bad way to end your Genesis career on with that amazing song.
All right. Well, thank you guys for watching. We will see you next time for And Then There Were Three. Just remember, music is art. Art is expression. Follow you, follow me. See you next time. Follow you.
Follow me.